Elena Rostova handed over $700 for a building that had been sealed shut for 23 years. The orphanage stood like a monument to forgotten children, its windows dark as dead eyes. What she found behind the walls would baffle investigators for decades, and remains unexplained to this very day. The iron gates of the Mercy Falls Children's Home stood 12 feet tall, crowned with fleur-de-lis spikes that had rusted to the color of dried blood. Elena Rostova gripped the steering wheel of her 15-year-old Honda and stared through the windshield at the structure beyond. For stories of soot-stained limestone rose against the November sky like something clawed up from the earth rather than built upon it. The mansard roof sagged in the middle, and every window on the north face had been boarded over with plywood that had long since weathered to gray. She had been sitting here for 10 minutes, engine idling, heat blasting against the main cold that seeped through every gap in her car's failing weather stripping. The real estate agent was late. Or perhaps she wasn't coming at all. Perhaps this was some kind of elaborate hoax, though Elena couldn't imagine why anyone would bother. $700. That's what the listing had said. $700 for a 4-story building on 2 acres of land in Thomaston, Maine, just 40 minutes from the coast. Elena had called the number 3 times before anyone answered, certain it was a typo or a scam. But the woman on the phone, Diane Merrick, according to her curt introduction, had confirmed the price and scheduled a showing for today at 2 o'clock. It was now 2:17 p.m. Elena checked her phone. No service. The hills around Thomaston had always been dead zones. She remembered that much from childhood trips to visit her grandmother. She looked back at the orphanage and felt something cold move through her chest. Not fear exactly. More like recognition. As if the building had been waiting specifically for her. She killed the engine. The silence that followed was immediate and total. No birds. No wind. Just the tick-tick-tick of her cooling engine and the sound of her own breathing fogging in the sudden cold. Elena stepped out of the car and immediately wished she'd worn a heavier coat. The temperature felt wrong for November, too cold, too sharp, like January had arrived early and settled its full weight over this one specific piece of land. She pulled her thin jacket tighter and walked toward the gate. A chain and padlock held it shut, though the chain hung loose and the padlock dangled open. Someone had been here recently. Elena pushed the gate and it swung inward with a shriek of rusted hinges that echoed across the overgrown grounds. The driveway curved through what had once been manicured lawns. Now it was a tangle of dead grass and skeletal bushes that clawed at the gray sky. A stone fountain sat in the center of the circular drive, its basin cracked and filled with frozen leaves. Cherub statues ringed the fountain's edge, their faces eroded by decades of weather until their features had become alien and unsettling. Elena stopped at the fountain and looked back toward the road. Her car was barely visible through the trees. The gate had swung partially closed behind her. She thought about getting back in the Honda and driving away. She thought about her apartment in Portland, cramped and expensive and due for another rent increase she couldn't afford. She thought about her daughter, Anya, 7 years old, and asking why they had to share a bedroom when her friends at school had houses. She thought about the eviction notice she'd received last week. $700. She had exactly $912 in her checking account. If she bought this place, she'd have $212 left until her next paycheck from the diner where she worked doubles 4 days a week. It was insane. It was impossible. But so was everything else about her life right now. A car door slammed behind her. Elena turned. A silver Lexus had pulled up behind her Honda, and a woman in a camel-colored coat was walking briskly toward the gate, heels clicking on the pavement. She was in her 50s, blonde hair pulled back severely, carrying a leather portfolio that probably cost more than Elena's monthly rent. "Ms. Rostova?" The woman's voice was clipped, professional, impatient. "I'm Diane Merrick. Sorry I'm late. Traffic on Route 1 was a nightmare." Elena walked back to meet her at the gate. "No problem. I just got here myself." Diane didn't offer to shake hands. She pulled out a key ring crowded with dozens of keys, selected one without hesitation, and unlocked the padlock on the gate. Let's make this quick. I have another appointment at 4 in Brunswick. Can you tell me about the property? Elena asked as they walked up the drive. It's listed as is. No inspections, no warranties. The estate wants it gone. Diane's heels crunched on the gravel. She didn't look at the building, Elena noticed. Her eyes stayed fixed on the path ahead. What estate? The previous owner died 6 months ago. Her heirs want nothing to do with it. Diane pulled out another set of keys as they approached the front entrance. The building was an orphanage until 2001. It's been vacant since then. Elena had done her research during her lunch break yesterday, huddled over her phone in the diner's back office. The Mercy Falls Children's Home had operated for 73 years, housing anywhere from 20 to 50 children at a time. In the spring of 2001, 15 children had gone missing over a period of 6 months. Not all at once. 1 or 2 at a time. Quietly. Almost unnoticed until a visiting social worker realized the records didn't match the number of children she'd seen. The director, a woman named Catherine Blackwell, had vanished the same night the state launched its investigation. The children were never found. No bodies. No evidence. No explanation. The case had consumed the news cycle for 3 months, then faded. The building had been locked up and left to rot. 23 years of weather and neglect had done their work. Why is it so cheap? Elena asked. Diane stopped at the front door. For the first time, she looked directly at Elena, and something in her expression made Elena's stomach tighten. Because no one wants it, Diane said flatly. The last 3 people who tried to buy it backed out before closing. One contractor started renovations and quit after 4 days. Wouldn't say why. Just packed up his tools and left. That doesn't explain the price. The estate wants it gone. Off the books. Off their conscience. Diane slid a large brass key into the lock. I'm required to tell you that local folklore says the building is haunted. Kids dare each other to break in, but no one ever does. Vandals have hit every other abandoned property in the county, but not this one. Make of that what you will. The lock turned with a heavy click that seemed too loud in the stillness. Last chance to walk away, Diane said. She wasn't smiling. Elena thought about Anya. About the eviction notice. About the fact that she'd come this far and $700 was $700. Open it, she said. Diane pushed the door open. It swung inward smoothly, silently, as if the hinges had been oiled yesterday. Darkness yawned beyond the threshold, so complete it seemed almost solid. The smell that rolled out was cold and mineral, like water that had been locked underground for too long. Diane pulled a flashlight from her portfolio and clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a grand entrance hall. A staircase swept upward to the left, its banister carved from dark wood that gleamed dully in the light. To the right, a corridor stretched back into shadow. Directly ahead, beneath the stairs, a door stood ajar. Elena could just make out the words painted on its surface, basement, staff only. Electrical was shut off in 2001, Diane said, her voice echoing strangely in the empty space. Plumbing too. There's no heat, no water, no power. The property is sold as is. If you want to make it livable, you'll need to hire contractors to reconnect everything. Elena stepped inside. The cold hit her immediately, far worse than outside. Her breath came out in white plumes. The floor was marble, she realized. Black and white tiles laid in a checkerboard pattern, mostly intact despite decades of neglect. Wallpaper hung in strips from the walls, revealing plaster beneath. A chandelier hung from the ceiling 2 stories above, its crystals dulled by dust. How many rooms? Elena asked. 43, including bathrooms and storage. 4 floors plus the basement and attic. Diane's flashlight beam moved across the hall. There's a commercial kitchen, a dining hall, administrative offices on the 1st floor. Dormitories on floors 2 through 4. The attic was used for storage. Elena walked deeper into the hall. Her footsteps echoed wrong, the sound bouncing back with strange delays that made it seem like someone was following her. She stopped and the echoes continued for a moment too long. "What's in the basement?" she asked. "Storage, mechanical systems, old records." "I haven't been down there." Diane stayed near the door. Her flashlight hand was shaking slightly. "Look, Ms. Rostova, I'll be honest with you. I think you'd be making a mistake buying this place. It's a money pit. It'll take $100,000 to make it habitable, maybe more. There are dozens of better properties on the market. Not for $700. There's a reason it's $700. Elena turned to look at her. "Are you trying to talk me out of a sale?" Diane's jaw tightened. "I'm trying to make sure you understand what you're getting into." "I understand I'm getting into a building I can afford." Elena walked back toward the door. "I'll take it." Diane stared at her for a long moment. Then she opened her portfolio and pulled out a sheaf of papers. "The owner wants a cash sale. No mortgage, no inspection period. You sign today, it's yours today. No backing out." "Fine." They sat in Diane's Lexus with the engine running and the heat blasting. Elena read through the papers quickly. Standard deed transfer, as-is sale, all liability transferred to buyer. The property included the building and 2 acres of land. There were no contingencies, no warranties, no guarantees of any kind. She signed on the last page and handed over $700 in cash she'd withdrawn from the ATM that morning. Diane counted it twice, then handed Elena a set of keys. 3 large brass keys and 1 small one. The large ones are for the front door, the rear door, and the gate. The small one is for the office on the first floor. That's where the previous owner kept the building records. "Thank you," Elena said. Diane put the car in gear. "Good luck, Ms. Rostova. You're going to need it." She drove away without another word, her Lexus disappearing down the long driveway and through the gate. Elena stood alone in the circular drive, keys cold in her palm, staring up at the Mercy Falls Children's Home. Her building now. She walked back to the entrance. The door still stood open, darkness waiting beyond. Elena pulled out her phone and turned on its flashlight. The battery was at 43%. She'd have to make this quick. She crossed the threshold. The moment both her feet were inside, every light in the building turned on at once. Elena gasped and stumbled backward. Overhead fixtures blazed to life throughout the entrance hall. The chandelier above her suddenly glowed with dozens of bulbs that should have been dead for 23 years. Light poured down the corridors, spilled up the staircase, illuminated doorways she couldn't see from where she stood. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The electricity had been shut off. Diane had confirmed it. There was no power running to this building. And yet every light burned steady and bright. Elena stood frozen, her phone flashlight still on and suddenly useless in the blazing brightness. She could see everything now. The peeling wallpaper. The dusty chandelier. The scratches on the marble floor that looked almost like words, though she couldn't make them out from here. And she could see the basement door beneath the stairs, standing wider open than it had been a moment ago. From somewhere below, definitely from below, from down in that dark basement where the lights had not turned on, she heard a sound that turned her blood to ice. A child singing. Faint, distant, echoing up from the depths. A little girl's voice, high and sweet and utterly impossible. "Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies." Elena's hand found the doorframe. She needed to leave. Needed to run. Needed to get back in her car and drive away and never come back. But then she thought of Anya. Of the eviction notice. Of having nowhere else to go. And she thought of 15 missing children who had never been found. The singing continued, soft and patient, as if it had been waiting 23 years for someone to finally listen. Elena took a deep breath, pulled out her phone, and called the police. No signal. She tried again. Nothing. She looked back at the entrance. The door had closed behind her while she wasn't watching. When she tried the handle, it wouldn't turn. 3 weeks before Elena Rostova bought the Mercy Falls Children's Home, she sat on the floor of her daughter's bedroom counting coins from a mason jar. The jar had once held pasta sauce. Now it held everything left of her emergency fund. $127.43 in quarters, dimes, nickels, and pennies that she'd been collecting for 3 years. It wasn't enough. The eviction notice lay on the floor beside her, the words stark and unforgiving, 30 days to vacate. She'd missed 2 months of rent. Her landlord, Mr. Patterson, had been patient, far more patient than he'd needed to be, but patience had limits. He had a mortgage to pay. He had his own family to feed. Elena understood. Understanding didn't make the notice hurt any less. Anya was at school. 1st grade. 6 hours where Elena could pretend everything was fine, where she could hold herself together and figure out some impossible solution before her daughter came home asking questions Elena couldn't answer. The apartment was small. A 1-bedroom in Portland's Bayside neighborhood, which was a polite way of saying the part of town where people ended up when they'd run out of better options. Elena slept on the couch. Anya had the bedroom. The kitchen was barely large enough for one person to stand in. The bathroom had mold in the corners that kept coming back no matter how much bleach Elena used. But it was theirs. Or it had been. Elena's phone buzzed on the floor beside her. She picked it up and saw a text from Brenda, her manager at the Lighthouse Diner where Elena worked. "Can you cover Maria's shift tonight? She called in sick." Elena closed her eyes. She'd just worked a double yesterday. Her feet still ached. Her back hurt from hours of carrying heavy trays and bending to wipe down tables. She was supposed to have tonight off. She was supposed to help Anya with her homework and maybe watch a movie together, something they hadn't done in weeks. She texted back, "Yes." "What time?" 5 midnight. "Thanks, you're a lifesaver." 7 more hours of work. 7 more hours at minimum wage plus whatever tips she could scrape together. Maybe she'd make an extra $60 if she was lucky. $60 that would go toward the $1,800 she owed in back rent. The math was impossible. It had been impossible for months. Elena had been treading water in a riptide, exhausting herself just to stay in place, and now the current was finally pulling her under. Her ex-husband, Daniel, had left 4 years ago. Just walked out one morning while Anya was still sleeping, leaving nothing but a note on the kitchen counter that said he needed to find himself. Elena had found out 3 months later that he'd moved to Colorado with a woman he'd met online. He sent $200 a month in child support when he remembered, which was roughly half the time. His phone number had changed twice in 4 years. The last time Elena had tried to call him about Anya's birthday, the number was disconnected. She was alone. Completely alone. No family nearby. Her mother had died when Elena was 19, and her father had remarried and moved to Arizona, where he had a new family and little interest in the daughter from his first marriage. No close friends. Working at the diner left no time for friendships. Her coworkers were kind but distant, everyone too exhausted by their own struggles to take on anyone else's. Anya was everything. The only thing that mattered. The only reason Elena kept going when everything else felt impossible. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, probably a scam, probably someone trying to sell her something she couldn't afford, but desperation made her pick up anyway. "Hello? Is this Elena Rostova?" A woman's voice, professional and clipped. "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Diane Merrick. I'm a real estate agent with Coastal Properties. I'm calling because you filled out an inquiry form on our website last month about affordable housing options." Elena vaguely remembered that. Late one night, after Anya had fallen asleep and Elena had been scrolling through listings she couldn't afford, she'd filled out a contact form on some website. She'd forgotten about it immediately. "I'm not really in a position to buy right now," Elena said carefully. "I understand. But I have a unique property that just came on the market, and given your situation, I thought you might be interested. It's listed at $700. Elena laughed. She couldn't help it. $700? For what? A parking space. For a building. For stories, 43 rooms, 2 acres of land in Thomaston, Maine. The laughter died in Elena's throat. What's wrong with it? It needs work, Diane said. Significant work. But the estate is motivated to sell. They're pricing it to move quickly. Why? A pause. It has a difficult history. I'm required by law to disclose that. But the structure is sound. With the right investment, it could be livable. Elena's mind raced. $700. She had $912 in her checking account, her last paycheck before rent was due. If she bought a building, even a building that needed work, she'd have something. A place to live. A roof over Anya's head. Time to figure out the rest. Can I see it? Elena asked. They scheduled the showing for 3 weeks later, Diane's earliest availability. Elena spent those 3 weeks working every shift she could get, saving every dollar, and researching the Mercy Falls Children's Home late at night on her phone. The articles she found were disturbing. The orphanage had been founded in 1928 by a wealthy widow named Eleanor Thorne, who'd lost her own children to influenza and dedicated her fortune to helping orphan children. For 70 years, it operated quietly and unremarkably. Children came, children left through adoption or aging out of the system. Nothing unusual. Then in January 2001, a 6-year-old girl named Sophie Chen disappeared from her bed. The staff reported her as a runaway, though she'd left behind all her belongings, including her winter coat. In March, 2 more children vanished, siblings, a boy and girl, ages 8 and 10. Again, no explanation. No evidence of foul play. The director, Catherine Blackwell, told authorities the children must have run away together. By June, 15 children had gone missing. The state finally launched an investigation. When social workers arrived unannounced on June 23, they found the building nearly empty. Only 5 children remained, all of whom seemed confused and unable to explain where the others had gone. Catherine Blackwell was nowhere to be found. Her office had been cleaned out. Her car was in the driveway, but she was gone. The children were transferred to other facilities. The building was sealed. The investigation went on for 2 years but uncovered nothing. No bodies. No witnesses. No clues. The case went cold. Catherine Blackwell was never seen again. Elena read about search parties combing the woods around the property. About cadaver dogs that refused to enter the building. About investigators who reported feeling uneasy and watched while examining the site. About the building's reputation in the years since, the stories of lights turning on in empty rooms, of voices heard by hikers passing nearby, of children's handprints appearing on windows that had been boarded shut. Elena turned toward it, her heart hammering. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm the new owner. My name is Elena. The rustling stopped. Then, from the darkness ahead, a small figure stepped into the edge of her light. A little girl. She was maybe 8 years old, wearing a white nightgown that hung to her ankles. Her feet were bare and impossibly pale against the dark concrete. Her hair was dark and hung in long tangles around her face. She stood perfectly still, hands at her sides, staring at Elena with eyes that reflected the flashlight beam like an animal's. Elena's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Every rational part of her mind screamed that this was impossible. But she was looking at her. The girl was there. Real. Solid. Are you real? Elena whispered. The girl tilted her head, the movement jerky and wrong, like a broken doll. Are you? Her voice was hollow. Distant. As if she were speaking from the bottom of a well or from somewhere very far away. What's your name? Elena asked, though she already knew. Somehow she already knew. Sophie. The breath left Elena's lungs. Sophie Chen. The first child to disappear. January 2001. 23 years ago. This girl should be 29 years old now. She should have grown up, should have lived a life. But she was still 8. Still here. That's impossible, Elena whispered. Sophie's expression didn't change. You should leave. Before you see what we saw. Before you become what we became. What are you? The question came out broken. We're still here. Sophie's voice was flat, emotionless. We've always been here. We can't leave. Not until someone understands. Not until someone knows what she did. Who? Catherine Blackwell? Sophie's face twisted into something that might have been anger or might have been pain. She said she loved us. She said she was protecting us. She said the world was too cruel and we were safer here. Safer in the walls where nothing could hurt us. In the walls? Elena's stomach turned. What do you mean, in the walls? Sophie turned and walked back into the darkness. Wait. Elena followed, her light bouncing wildly. Wait, please. She found herself in a larger room. Old medical equipment lined the walls. Examination tables with leather restraints. Cabinets with glass doors filled with bottles whose labels had faded to nothing. And on the far wall, something that made Elena's blood run cold. A door. Heavy metal, like something from a bank vault. And beside it, scratched into the concrete wall in letters 2 feet high, the words carved deep and desperate. She kept US in the walls. We couldn't breathe. We called for help. No one came. Elena stood frozen, her light trembling in her shaking hand. She could see other words now, scratched everywhere on the walls. Names. Dates. Desperate messages from children who'd known they were going to die. When she looked back, Sophie was gone. But she could hear them now. All of them. 15 voices, singing together in the darkness, their voices layered and echoing like they were coming from inside the walls themselves. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. The vault door began to open. Slowly. Silently. Moving on hinges that shouldn't work after 23 years. And from inside, Elena saw them. All 15 children. Standing in the darkness beyond, their faces pale and their eyes empty, staring at her with expressions that held no hope, no joy, only the terrible patience of those who had been waiting for a very long time. Help us, they whispered together. Please help us. Tell them what she did. Tell them where we are. Elena stumbled backward. Her phone slipped from her hand, the light spinning wildly across the ceiling before clattering to the floor. In the darkness, she heard footsteps. Small footsteps. Coming closer. She ran. She ran through the basement, hands outstretched in the dark, crashing into furniture and walls. She found the stairs by Sherlock and scrambled up them on her hands and knees. The entrance hall lights were still blazing. She threw herself at the front door, yanking the handle with all her strength. It opened. She fell through into the cold November air, scrambled to her feet, and ran to her car. Her hands shook so badly she dropped her keys twice before getting the door open. She threw herself inside, locked the doors, and started the engine. Only then did she look back at the orphanage. Every window on every floor was filled with small faces. Children, dozens of them, pressing against the glass from inside. Their hands left prints on the dusty windows. Their mouths moved in unison, forming words Elena couldn't hear but understood. Help us. Please. Help us. The lights inside flickered once, twice. Then went dark. Elena drove away, tires screaming on the pavement. She didn't stop shaking until she reached Jennifer's house to pick up Anya. She held her daughter so tight that Anya squirmed and complained. Mama, you're squishing me. Sorry, baby. I just missed you. That night, lying on her couch while Anya slept in the next room, Elena stared at the ceiling and knew she couldn't walk away. Those children were still there. Still trapped. Still waiting for someone to tell their story. She had bought that building. She owned it now. And somehow, that meant she owned their story too. The next morning, Elena called the Thomaston Police Department and asked to speak to whoever had handled the original investigation in 2001. 3 days later, Detective Sarah Morrison sat across from Elena in a coffee shop, listening to her story with an expression that went from skeptical to deeply troubled. "I worked that case," Morrison said quietly. "It broke me. 15 kids gone without a trace. I've never stopped thinking about it." "Then help me," Elena said. "Help me find out what really happened. Help me bring them home." Morrison looked at her for a long moment. Then she nodded. What they would discover in the walls of the Mercy Falls Children's Home would horrify the nation. The investigation would reopen old wounds and uncover secrets that powerful people had spent decades burying. And the truth about Catherine Blackwell and what she had done to those children would prove more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. But that discovery was still weeks away. For now, Elena simply knew this: she had bought a building full of ghosts. And somehow, impossibly, they were real. And they were waiting for her to save them. What Elena and Detective Morrison discovered would become one of the most disturbing criminal cases in American history. The truth about the missing children, hidden in the walls for 23 years, defied explanation and challenged everything investigators thought they knew about the case. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more incredible true mystery tales. Your support helps us bring you these stories every week. And if this story moved you, consider leaving a comment sharing your thoughts. We read every single one. The case of the Mercy Falls Children's Home remains officially unexplained to this day. The building still stands, and some say on quiet nights, you can still hear children singing inside. Thank you for watching.